hadn't meant to stay long. Just a quick cup, a place to warm up before walking back to the house I rented above hers. The café wasn't anything special, brown tables with edges chipped from too many elbows, a machine that hissed louder than it needed to, the kind of background chatter that makes you feel anonymous. I liked it that way. She walked in like she didn't belong to the noise. My landlady, Anna. Mid-40s, maybe 46. Not the kind of woman who tried to look younger, not the kind who apologized for being noticed either. I didn't wave, just looked down at my cup like I'd been caught stealing time. But she saw me anyway, the kind of glance that feels deliberate, even if it isn't. "Didn't expect to find you here," she said when she came over. Her voice always carried a softness at the edges, like she was thinking of something else while talking. "Didn't expect you to find me?" I said back, half-smile. Eyes still on the coffee I hadn't touched in minutes. She set her bag down, slid into the chair across. No asking if she could. Just sitting like it was already decided. "You always get the Americano, right?" she asked. I blinked. "Yeah. How'd you?" "You leave the cup in the sink sometimes. Black ring at the bottom. Easy to tell." She said it so casually, but her eyes didn't move away when she did. I wanted to laugh, but it came out more like a short exhale. My hand found the edge of the napkin, folded it once, then again until it was too small to fold anymore. "You don't sugarcoat much, do you?" I said. She tilted her head. "Not for coffee, no." A pause. Not an awkward one. Just long enough for me to notice the sound of someone else's spoon clinking in a mug behind us. I'd been staying in the apartment over her garage for 2 months. We'd only talked about rent, mail, one time about the noise of the water heater. That was it. But sitting here, it felt like she knew more than she should. Or maybe I just wanted her to. Her hand brushed against the table, fingertips drumming once, twice, then stopping. "So, do you ever text anyone before you come here?" I froze, not sure if it was a real question or just words thrown out. "I mean," she continued, "you always sit alone. Thought maybe someone was supposed to join you." I thought of my phone heavy in my pocket, the unsent messages, a list of half-written hellos I never finished. "Not really," I said too quickly. Then softer, "No," she nodded, like she'd expected that answer. Silence again. Her eyes flicked toward the window, then back to me. For a second, I let myself look at her hands. Bare, no ring, nails short. She noticed, didn't move them. "Rent's due next week," she said suddenly, almost like she needed to ground the air again. "Right?" I said, clearing my throat. "I'll, have it ready." But neither of us stood. The barista called out someone's name. A door opened, closed. Life went on around us. But something about the way she leaned forward, just slightly, elbows on the table, made it feel like the moment was held in place. "Anyway," she said finally, gathering her bag. She stood, but not before brushing her fingers across my folded napkin, flattening it like it had been hers. She left with a half-smile, nothing more. I sat there, staring at the napkin she'd touched, until my phone lit up in my pocket. A message from her. "Don't sit alone next time." I didn't reply to her message right away. I read it 3 times, turned off the screen, turned it back on. "Don't sit alone next time." Could have been nothing. Kindness. A landlady making sure her tenant wasn't drifting into some quiet kind of sadness. That's what I told myself, anyway. The next evening, I found myself downstairs in her kitchen, standing awkwardly while she boiled water for tea. "You actually came," she said, glancing over her shoulder. Her hair was tied back, a loose strand falling against her cheek. "You told me not to sit alone," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. She smiled at that, small but real. The kettle hissed between us. I shifted my weight, hands in my pockets. Her kitchen was lived in. Fridge covered with old postcards, a chipped mug with a faded logo that probably meant something once. When she handed me a cup, her fingers brushed mine, just enough to notice. We sat at the table. She stirred her tea even though she hadn't added anything to it. "I used to come down here after the house was quiet," she said. "When my son still lived here." I'd make tea and wait for him to come back from wherever he'd gone. He never knew. I didn't answer right away. The mention of her son, my friend, though we weren't close anymore, hung in the air. It sharpened the space between us. You don't have to tell me that, I said carefully. I know. She took a sip, eyes on the cup. But I wanted to. Silence stretched. My chest felt heavy with something unnamed. Guilt? Curiosity? Both? I imagined her waiting at this table years ago. The same chipped mug, the same late-night stillness. And now me sitting here instead. You're too young for tea, she said suddenly, like she wanted to lighten the weight she'd put down. I'm 24, not 12, I said. She laughed quietly. Still, the laugh caught me off guard. I stared too long, then looked away, tracing the rim of my cup with my finger. My phone buzzed once in my pocket, but I didn't check it. You ever feel like people don't really see you? She asked, not looking at me. The question hung there, raw. Yeah, I said. All the time. Her eyes lifted then, steady on mine. Not searching, not testing, just there. I don't know how long we sat like that, saying nothing. Long enough for the tea to go cold. For me to notice the quiet rhythm of her breathing. She reached across the table, nudged my untouched cup closer to me with a single fingertip. Drink before it's wasted, she said, smiling faintly. A small gesture, but I felt it lodge somewhere deep, heavier than it should have been. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. After that night in her kitchen, I kept telling myself it was nothing. Tea. Conversation. A neighborly kindness stretched a little too far. But the problem was I couldn't stop replaying it. The way her eyes lingered, the brush of her finger against my cup. Small things. Too small to mean anything. Too heavy not to. The next week, I came home to find her bent over the garden outside, pulling weeds with gloved hands. I almost went straight upstairs. Almost. Need help? I asked before I could stop myself. She looked up, shielding her eyes from the sun. Don't you have better things to do? Probably. She smirked, motioned with her chin. Then grab those bags. We worked in silence, plastic sacks filling with green and dirt. I kept stealing glances, her knees in the grass, the way she wiped sweat from her neck with the back of her arm. Ordinary, but it felt like watching something I shouldn't. When we were done, she sat back on the porch step, breathing heavy. I handed her a bottle of water. Our fingers brushed again. She didn't move hers away right away. Thanks, she said quiet. I sat beside her. Too close. Not close enough. And then footsteps. A voice calling from the sidewalk. Mom! I stiffened. Her son. My old friend. I hadn't seen him in months. He waved casually, phone in hand, barely noticing me. Didn't know you were in town, he said to me. Yeah, just around, I muttered. He turned back to his mom. I'll come by tomorrow. Grabbed the boxes from the garage. He kissed her cheek, glanced at me again, then left like nothing was strange at all. But everything felt strange. She exhaled once he was gone, like she'd been holding her breath. You should probably keep some distance, she murmured, not looking at me. I nodded, even though my chest tightened at the words. Yeah, sure. Neither of us moved. The sky was dimming, the porch light flicking on with a hum. I noticed the dirt on her gloves, the small cut on her forearm. Details my eyes caught without permission. She finally stood, brushing off her jeans. Thanks for the help. I almost said, anytime, but stopped myself. Inside, I found her later by accident or maybe not. She was in the living room sorting through mail. I lingered in the doorway too long. She looked up. Something you need? I opened my mouth. Closed it. No. Just thought I heard something. A pause. Her eyes softened, almost like she wanted to say the same. We stood there, silence thick as wet air before rain. My feet carried me closer without a plan. Close enough to see the faint freckles at her collarbone. Her breath caught just once. I leaned in, not fully, just enough for her to know. For both of us to know. And then she stepped back. I should, she started, voice breaking on the word. She left it unfinished. I stayed in the doorway, heart pounding, wishing silence didn't feel so loud. It was late evening when she asked if I wanted to walk with her. Nothing dramatic. Just a stretch of the legs after dinner, she said. We followed the street that curved past the park, lamps flickering on one by one. She kept her hands in her coat pockets, shoulders drawn in slightly against the chill. I matched her pace without thinking. Funny, she said. I've walked this road for years, always by myself. Feels different tonight. I swallowed, unsure if I should answer. Good different. She didn't reply right away, just glanced at me from the corner of her eye. Dangerous different. That word stuck, hung between us like a fog. We sat on a bench near the basketball court, chain nets clinking in the wind. Her breath came out in little clouds. I noticed how her foot tapped once against the ground, then stopped, as if catching itself. You know, when my son left for college, she said slowly, I thought I'd be relieved. The quiet. No more dishes piled in the sink. But it was emptier than I expected. I waited. Her eyes stayed forward. I'd make 2 cups of coffee out of habit, she went on. Set one down. Then realize no one else was coming. Something tightened in my chest. I wanted to tell her I understood, even though my reasons were different. The half-written texts I never sent. The silences I filled with anything but company. You shouldn't tell me this, I said finally. She turned, sharp but soft. Why not? Because. My voice trailed off. I stared at the pavement. Because I don't know what it means, or what you want it to mean. Silence again. Only the wind moving the swing set behind us. She let out a short laugh, though there wasn't anything funny in it. Maybe I don't know either. I looked at her then. Really looked. The way the lamplight caught the lines near her eyes. The way she seemed both steady and fragile at once. Something broke in me. I think about you, I said. The words came out low, almost like I hadn't meant to say them out loud. Her hands tightened in her pockets. She didn't move, didn't breathe, maybe. You're too young, she whispered finally. I don't feel young, I said. She shut her eyes, shook her head once, like she was trying to erase the air between us. This isn't fair. To you, to me, to. She cut herself off. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, searching her face. She opened her eyes then, and for a moment, neither of us looked away. It felt like the world had narrowed to that bench, to her hands hidden in her pockets, to my pulse in my ears. Her lips parted, just slightly, like she might say something more, or do something, but she didn't. Instead, she asked quietly, almost to herself, what happens if we don't stop? After that night on the bench, things changed. Not all at once. More like a slow fade. She stopped leaving the kitchen light on when I came home late. No more texts about tea, or casual walks, or don't sit alone. Just silence, stretched thin across the days. I told myself it was nothing, that she'd gotten busy, that I'd imagined what I thought I saw in her eyes. But she was there, always there, in the garden, in the driveway, carrying groceries inside. Except now her gaze slid past me too quickly. Conversations clipped short. Rent reminders left in an envelope instead of spoken at the door. One evening, I heard laughter through the wall. Her voice, lighter than I'd heard in months. A man's voice answering. I froze, hand on the railing, caught in a moment that felt both private and cruel. I didn't go down. Didn't want to know who he was or what he meant. The next morning, she caught me leaving for class. She looked tired, hair still damp from a shower, eyes rimmed with something unspoken. You'll be late, she said, like that was all. I nodded, gripping my bag tighter. Yeah. I waited for more. A smile. A question. Anything. But she just stepped aside, holding the door frame as if it were the only thing keeping her steady. Days blurred. I stayed out longer, took the long way home. Sat in cafes until closing, headphones in but no music playing. One night my phone buzzed. Her name on the screen. My chest tightened. I opened it fast before I could think. Don't wait up. That was it. 3 words, no weight in them, but they landed heavy. I typed back, I wasn't. Deleted it. Typed again, are you okay? Deleted that too. I left the screen blank. My thumb hovered, then set the phone face down on the table. Later, I heard a car pull into the driveway. A door slam. Her footsteps, unsteady on the porch. I almost went down, almost knocked. Instead, I sat on my bed, lights off, watching the shadows stretch across the ceiling. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. The next morning, her car was gone. The chair she always left angled toward the window sat empty. For the first time in weeks, I wished she'd left me another note, even just about the rent. I found her in the kitchen again, late. The light was low, the only sound the hum of the fridge. She was sitting at the table with a half-finished glass of wine, staring at it like it might explain something. I hesitated in the doorway, thought about turning back upstairs. But she looked up, eyes catching mine, and I couldn't. You're home, she said. Not a question. Yeah. My voice felt rough in the stillness. She motioned to the chair across from her. Sit if you want. I did. Slowly. The wood creaked under me like it disapproved. For a long time, neither of us spoke. She twisted the stem of her glass between her fingers, the wine leaving faint streaks on the glass. I kept my hands folded on the table, staring at a small scratch in the wood that ran diagonally like an old scar. Finally, she said, I didn't mean to disappear. The words landed heavy. I nodded, but something in me ached. I noticed. She exhaled. There was someone briefly. It didn't mean much, but it made me think maybe I was reaching for something I shouldn't. The air felt thin. My throat tighter. You mean me? I said. Her eyes flinched shut for a moment, then opened again. You're too young to be tangled in someone else's unfinished story. I wanted to argue, to tell her that age didn't cancel out what I felt every time she looked at me a second too long. But the words stuck, thick and clumsy. Instead, I said, you make me feel less alone. That broke something in her. I saw it. The way her hand stilled on the glass. The way her shoulders lowered as if she couldn't keep holding herself up. I shouldn't need that from you, she whispered. And I shouldn't need it from you, I said. But I do. We sat in it. The quiet, the rawness. Neither of us moving, afraid that if we did, the moment would vanish. She finally pushed the glass aside, leaned her elbows on the table. If we keep going. She stopped, shook her head. I don't know what happens. Me neither, I admitted. Her eyes found mine then, steady and tired and something else. Something I couldn't name. So what do we do? I swallowed. The silence between us felt like it could tilt either way. Break us or bind us. Slowly, I reached across the table. Not bold, not claiming, just my hand resting near hers. Close enough to touch if she wanted. For a moment, she stared at it. Then her fingers slid over mine, light, hesitant. Not a declaration, just an answer. She gave the smallest smile, the kind you'd miss if you weren't looking straight at her. Okay, she said, and tea time didn't fix anything all at once. It just moved, slow, steady, unbothered by what we carried. Some weeks we circled each other again, careful, like nothing had been said in the kitchen. Other weeks we slipped back into old habits. Tea left on the counter. A quiet don't sit alone, tucked into the rhythm of ordinary evenings. One morning, I came down at 8:47 a.m., the exact time she always left for work, and found her still at the table, hands wrapped around a mug. Black coffee, no sugar. You're late, I said, trying not to smile. She raised an eyebrow. Or maybe I'm early. It was nothing, but it was everything too. The garden grew back in. She let me pull weeds again, though she never asked. We walked the same road past the park, sat on the same bench. This time, no sharp words, no unfinished confessions. Just her shoulder brushing mine, steady. Once, I caught her staring at the chain net swaying in the wind, Her lips curved just slightly. "What?" I asked. "Nothing," she said. But her hand found mine on the bench between us. Stayed there calm like it belonged. We didn't name it. We didn't have to. Evenings became softer. Shared silence in her kitchen. The hum of the fridge, 2 cups cooling side by side. Sometimes tea, sometimes coffee. Sometimes just water. It didn't matter. The point was 2 cups, not 1. I thought back to what she'd said before, about setting an extra cup out and realizing no one was coming. Now the cups weren't waiting. They were used. And me? I didn't linger in cafes with blank screens anymore. I didn't write unsent texts. I had somewhere to sit. Someone to sit with. She wasn't different, not really. Still sharp, still steady, still pausing too long before she spoke. But there was a softness in the way she handed me a mug now, her fingers brushing mine without retreating. Life didn't transform into something cinematic. Bills still came. Rent still mattered. Some nights she fell asleep early on the couch with paperwork on her lap. Some mornings I left before she even stirred. But when we found each other, at the table on the porch walking the road after dinner, it felt less like chance, more like choice. The kind of choice you make quietly, every day. One night, sitting at the bench again, she leaned her head against my shoulder. Nothing said. Nothing needed. I thought of the first time she'd sat across from me at the café, of the folded napkin she'd flattened with her fingertip, of the message she'd sent. "Don't sit alone next time." I smiled to myself, and this time I answered her without words. By not sitting alone. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next? That was it. Enough.